Hello and welcome to Inforunners Ship Scrutiny, the show where we look at a ship trolling through all the information that we can find and looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today we're going to be looking at the Argo MPUV. What better time to do that when it's been just gone head to head with the Carrack, everybody's favourite ship, um, resulting in probably the largest vote that we've ever seen in a best in show vote, whether you like it or hate it.
Yeah.
Um, but we thought we'd go through, look at my favourite ship. I'm pretty certain it's one of Paul's favourite ships. Um,
Algared, that's the whole
we're trying to
reason.
talk.
It's the whole reason he's here, Algared. We've never not done
Yep,
one with
true.
anyone else but me and you, so we had to drag Paul along because it's his favorite
That's
ship.
right.
So.
We,
Yeah.
we dragged Paul in because we figured Paul would
We had to.
appreciate being here.
You have to bring the two experts on. Algrid is an expert on this, and I'm an expert on this, so we can sit here and teach everybody else who thinks this ship is useless that it actually has a pretty interesting, use case for it. So,
I'll just take a nap then while you. It's
yeah.
all good. All right, so I'm gonna flick over to this video now, and this is a really old video from Teller. So Algred, tell us about this because this is not the exact video you wanted to show, but it does show what you wanted to show. So
It does. It. I think it is the video I wanted to show, but
okay,
I saw this video from a reverse of. I'm pretty certain it was reverse reverse with Ben and Sandy. And when they showed it, it was like their sneak peek, and
yeah.
it was showing us ships that they're working on game, and this was looking at how the ships fitted, looking at the shapes, whether they work, whether they didn't work. And the reason you've got the guy doing his calisthenics at the top is this was also checking out the skeleton of the character. So this was, doing several things. But what is unique about this ship here is it's not, at this point, the Argo MPUV. It's an unnamed ship. It's just the Idris utility vehicle. And the other thing that's unique about this is you can see above the pilot's cab those black bars, and they're actually utility arms. One was a cutter and one was a torch for repair. You can also see it's got massive headlights. So this is at a basic essence and its absolute utility form. And it's the very first form we saw of the Idris utility vehicle in game. And you can see even at this point they were seeing the cargo pods as being the different from a ship. So these were orange, being
Mhm.
that industrial orange, whereas the utility vehicle itself, the cab, was blue. And so they were trying to differentiate the ship. Down the track, the ship did become Argo, and then as they developed the lore for Argo, we actually saw the ship get expanded out as well. Um, the ship is also very small. It had to fit in the Idris uh, small utility ship cargo bay, so I think it's limited to 6 meters by 4 meters by 3 meters or something like that. So even though we see this is different from the Argo MPUV, the cargo module is bigger, the dimensions of the ship have stayed pretty much the same.
The
I think.
those arms on the front are just so different to anything we have now.
Mm.
Mhm.
But you can still see the angle, that angle on the roof there is very similar to the angle we have on the Argo at the moment. So
Mm.
you can, uh, now when the Argo did come into game, I can remember Ben actually saying the arms aren't there because we couldn't get them working. It was
Mm.
like, the reclaimer arm. And they said, well, why put them in if they're not working? We're having issues with it. If we don't put them in, if we don't have the arms on, we can put it in. If the arms are there, we can't put it in. So they took the arms off.
Mm.
The implication being, when we get them working, we'll put them back. Very, very much the same as we've got with the Phoenix. The
Yeah. I
Phoenix, the
mean,
third
the
turret
auto
isn't
gun.
there,
Mm.
but
And it's important to remember that the MPUV is also going through a gold standard pass here shortly, and it may go through multiple gold standards because, as mentioned, this is a Squadron 42 ship. It was from the beginning. It's likely one of the first ships we've ever seen of,
mm,
or the first ships that were ever built
mm,
for Squadron 42. Um, Possibly been in the design documents or in the script of Squadron 42 since the beginning. It's one of the oldest ships in the game. So it's likely going to have a lot of changes to it as well. And there's maybe a lot of changes that we won't see. Those arms may never come back. They may have been
mm,
replaced with something else. But we don't know that because is in a Squadron 42 mission, and thus they're not going to talk about it because it would spoil the Squadron 42 experience.
Yeah.
So
So I want to do. I don't normally speculate in these, right? But for
mm,
me, this ship seems to be. It's kind of like the ship itself, and whatever it's carrying or doing is what changes its role. So if they were going to put those repair arms back, I'd almost expect it to be like a module underneath that it carries
yeah,
now. Um, we know that. I'm going to believe you said that this was a pilot rescue pod or something of that nature originally concepted. I don't know if they still have that.
In the original concept that we have where it's talked about. So the earliest I can recall reading anything on this was in Jump Point Volume 2, Number 3, The Birth of the Frigate
Mm,
article. And at the end of that article, you've got about 6 pages where they talk about the Idris utility vehicle.
yep,
And there are 5 things it's listed as being able to do. One is being a part designed specifically as a pilot recovery vehicle.
yep,
One is being able to do minor repairs
yep.
on the exterior of the hull of the capital ship. Um, Interestingly, they also say that this utility vehicle is on every Navy ship above frigate. So javelins, Bengals, um, re- re- uh, re-
Retribution.
retribution,
Yep.
um, they've all got them.
So,
And
so I'm
the other,
reading a list here off to my left here, Algrid, and you actually
yep,
it's got everything you mentioned. And the last one was the in extreme cases, the utility ship can assist in boarding actions and planetary drops. The point I want to kind of get back to though is that can you see that actually having 5 separate modules for most of those? Right, well, it probably doesn't need 5. Some of them are shared. I can actually just see that possibly as designers going forward, that it's more interchangeable. They just change
mm,
that module that it carries. And I know when we were talking even earlier today, someone suggested that it actually it might have been me, but I can't remember. But if you wanted to give this a quantum drive, it could literally just pick one up and put it underneath itself and have one.
mhm.
Um,
Well,
mm,
that's its strength. Like
yeah,
it's a utility ship, and it embodies utility, being that it's a Swiss Army knife. It embodies that structure of utility by the fact that it changes its role based off of the module that's attached to it. Right now, we only see 2. We know that there may be more in the process. We know that there was a like a search and rescue version, like a medical or pilot rescue version. Those arms might come in as its own version for a repair or salvage, module.
mm,
So the reality is that this is a flexible platform for whatever you want it to do at any given time, and that's where it really will engage, especially for supporting larger ships. This is really
yep,
where it becomes its real strength, is that because it's so flexible, it's so cheap, it can be swapped out. You can swap out these things probably fairly quickly because of the size of this thing,
mm,
and the storage of those modules wouldn't be too much of an issue. They don't take up a lot of space, and then it allows you for essentially a backup,
mm,
whatever you need. And inverse right now, you can buy these for about 200,000 UEC, which is about the same price as an Aurora.
yeah.
But you couldn't fit an Aurora in like the cargo bay
Mm.
of a 600, and this thing can.
I,
Like that.
so I was just going to
But
say that like the swapping of pods in a Vanguard or the bottom floor of a Redeemer, and now swapping of this, like it all kind of lines up in my head. I don't know if it does in yours, and I know I'm speculating here, but I just kind of
mhm.
I just see that that seems to be where they're leaning. So I wouldn't
Well,
be surprised
well,
if they brought that repair. Like I know they're sitting on the front here in this
mhm,
video, but I wouldn't be
mhm.
surprised if they had some kind of repair arm in the future that's just something attached underneath.
and you look at the modularity of this ship, even in the 2 we've got. So what we call the Argo Pargo, the passenger version, is really the carrying the rescue pod, the 8-man rescue pod
Yeah.
from a Javelin. That's why that version of the Argo comes with the Javelin. It's actually got
Mhm.
the 8-man escape pod. We know from the 890 jump when they released it, they talked about the 8-man escape pods and that being exactly the same size as the escape pods on the Javelin. One reason in law for that is because the connecting clamp on the Argo works perfectly. It was designed originally by Argo in the law to pick up the large containers from the rail network because Argo was having issues. They were getting their timetable run out of sync because of bottlenecks at the ports, and they developed their little ship to be able to literally take those big crates off the trains directly and take them up to where they needed, so they could get their trains were moving again. And that proprietary link is what is also used or is being used for those rescue pods. This is a versatile ship. It is great for doing almost any job, depending on what pod you put on it.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's got low signature, so even though it doesn't have a quantum drive, it's it'll probably be very difficult to pick up with active pinging and scanning. So if you wanted to insert a small tactical team into an area quietly, you could do it.
Mm.
It's got you can transport people back and forth from stations pretty easily. Cargo can be unloaded pretty quickly because it's that modular pod. You could just have empty pods and then just
Yep.
fill up a pod. The cargo comes in, picks it up, flies it over, drops it off at the station, then comes back. It allows it for quick off and on kind of thing. It possibly in the future. This is again speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised since that's its intended goal is unloading things like Whole Seas, the whole series. Pick up those big box crates, being able to pick those up and move them where they need to go as well. And because of its modularity, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do. Basically, once CIG adds that modularity system in the game, CIG could go nuts with it. They could just have fun. They could put whatever they figure they need to on this thing to make it important and or to make
Well,
it even more and more useful. So
I remember in chat someone was saying one about a pod with just turrets on it, just
yeah,
a turret pod. Suddenly
Yeah.
you've turned your little Argo grasshopper to a little ground support vehicle.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. It's a little bird helicopter in military. People know what the little bird is. It's like a spec ops insertion vehicle. It's a box truck, and it's a rescue ship. Like it's a you know,
And
it's a
in lore,
little.
it's dirt cheap.
Not just in lore, in game, it's dirt cheap too.
Yeah.
In terms of replacement costs, it's very cheap. And
Mm.
adding the quantum drive to it, like if like because the other thing I've heard a lot of people say about this is the ship needs a quantum drive to be useful. The problem about that is as the game progresses and we get more things like wear and tear in there, that would add complexity to the ship, which would then make it more difficult to function and give it a little bit too much of a damage possibility. So it doesn't because that's not its job. If you wanted something that has quantum on it, say use a Pisces, which has a similar profile. The difference is the Pisces doesn't have as much flexibility because it doesn't have the ability to swap out its back end for whatever it needs to do. So it's that trade off.
Yeah. So that's why it's so versatile.
The Pisces becomes sorry, keep going.
I was going to say that's why it's so versatile because that's because it lost that quantum drive and it's chained to its mothership, so to speak. That's why it's so versatile, and that's why I think it will retain at least those couple of basic modules.
And the key role of a ship is to work with a larger ship. It's the utility vehicle for an Idris. It's the utility vehicle that you find with a javelin. It's not meant to be able to do jumping off and doing massive searches. But I suppose if you needed to do that, you could always have a pod that gave it that ability to enhance its scouting ability for the mothership. But primarily, it's a ship for assisting what the mothership's doing around it. The pilot retrieval doesn't need a quantum for that because the mothership goes to where the fighters were downed. It goes out and then picks them up. It is that type of ship. The question, does it need a quantum drive, is an interesting one, and we think not. But if you do want a quantum drive on an Argo ship, you're going to make the ship bigger. And effectively, we were talking before for showing. We said, well, that's basically what the
SRV
SRV is. It's basically an upscaled Argo with a quantum drive and jump drive.
It's
Mm.
it's just the big brother to the to the MPUV. It's just
Mm.
you want a quantum drive and a jump drive on an MPUV. Here's the SRV. It does everything the MPUV does, but it can do it solo now, rather than being
Yep.
required to have another ship.
And I
That's the way you can scale it.
kind of want to add a little bit to what Algared said there about the Idris and the Javelin as well. Like the Kraken not having one, I think it is kind of detrimental to the Kraken, because the ability just to repair yourself ever so slightly and get back to a port or whatever, and not having to have a crucible come out to fix you up or whatever the repair ship is
And if you're on a Drake
huge.
ship, you need that.
I think
I know.
any
It's
big
my it's
capital
my
ship,
anti-Drake coming up.
any big capital ship is gonna
Mm.
benefit for having a repair ship, because when it really does get in the shit, it's going to be in big trouble. And I one of our supporters talked about the show, said, I've got a Javelin and I've got my Redeemer in it. What the hell am I ever going to have a use for the MPUV being in my ship? And I even then I was starting to think, well, you can have a VIP in the MPUV, and if and it's escorted by the Redeemer, and if something goes wrong, the Redeemer can go off and fight and distract, so you can get out of there. And I started running multiple scenarios through my head very
Yeah.
quickly.
And
Two
then
ships are always better than one.
yeah. And it doesn't take up the cargo. It doesn't take up a landing pad that
Mm.
you'd use for that Redeemer. It has an alternative little bay in the Idris. There's a landing pad port for these underneath. And it was
Mhm.
interesting that in the article in Jump Point where they talk about this, and when you first saw the Argo, just one of those fits in that underbelly. But in the article, they actually say, well, actually, that underbelly is actually big enough for several. Um, and so you could see an Idris with 2 or 3 of these possibly in that underbelly being able to be used. You certainly start to increase the, the versatility and the uses that you can get out of a ship when you've got more of those little things that can use. It's certainly not a fighter, and it doesn't need. And I've heard people say, "Oh, it needs weapons. It needs quantum drive." It doesn't need weapons. It's not its role. It doesn't need quantum drive. It's not its role. But what it does really well in terms of being, or should do really well in terms of being that recovery ship, that pilot transfer ship, that cargo lift ship, the emergency troop insertion ship. If you don't want to take a Redeemer and you need something else, this could actually act as your in that role. If you don't want to take the hoplite instead, as a troop ship, this can actually function as your drop ship. So many options, and that's just looking at the base things we've
Yeah.
got.
And it's important to think of this less as a ship and more as a part of another ship. It's
Mm.
like the Merlin in the sense that it is literally just part of the ship that you can use as part of your operations. Um, and it's designed for larger ships. And the reason why it really doesn't have a role right now is because larger ships like the Idris and the Javelin aren't in the game yet. However, I think when 315 rolls around and as we get to sort of
Mm.
see the game develop, this becomes a little bit more of an important thing. Are you really going to go all the way back to Lorville in your Idris because you didn't pick up that one important piece of armor you need to go into that next mission? Or are you just going to send the Argo
You didn't
MPUV
pick up
down?
your multi-tool from
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, is someone you're everyone's ready to go and your friend jumps on last minute. It's like, yeah, I just got done with work. I'm ready to go. And you go, oh, I don't have to go all the way back down and pick them up. Just send the Argo down there and go pick them up. Faster. It's going to get down there quicker. It's gonna land easier and take off. It might take a little bit more time at times, but now you don't have to waste valuable time prepping the Idris to go off where it needs to go to. And this can
and the
also
other
fit
key
in
thing
things
that
like a Carrack and other places too. So
the other key thing you raised before is it sniffs fuel. It doesn't guzzle it.
mhm.
There's
Yeah,
very few
it's
ships where you get out of that mode and you're going, oh, I haven't used much fuel. I'm cool. It's gee, I've guzzled 20% of my hydrogen or 30%, or in some
yeah.
cases, this sniffs fuel, and so your running costs are cheaper because it doesn't have as many um, detailed parts on it.
Mhm.
Repair costs are cheaper.
Mm.
The buying cost, as Paul said, 200,000 in game at present. So it's cheapest chips to buy in the market. It's even cheaper to buy in game. And I think that really is just selling that idea or pushing that idea of the versatility and utility value of this ship as a companion to larger capital ships.
I,
Yeah. And
I also
because of the inventory systems and such like that, that is really what it's designed to do. It's designed to add that flexibility when the game itself is telling you no. When the game is restricting your abilities to do things, it brings that flexibility back into the game. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say also don't underestimate that ability when it just has a cargo container underneath it, like all the different things that it can carry in that as well will be really invaluable to a ship like an Idris, because it's mainly fighters on that thing. So this is the resupply vessel for that when it's at port, and anything like flat packing a base or something into it that it can carry. I also start to think, like you were saying before, Paul, what are the other modules they could bring out down the road if they wanted to? Whole host of things, and we went through a whole variety before the show, but I don't think we'll go into that because that's probably a bit too spoilery.
No, a little too imagined territory,
yeah,
but
So I got a question for you guys. It feels like we've just been saying the good.
Mm-hmm.
What's the bad and the ugly?
It's not a ship. It's not a ship in the traditional sense. It's like the Merlin. This couldn't exist on its own. It's just no way this thing could function because it's
a very large
not
snub.
designed to.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a large snub.
And I'll admit, without the, I know people argue it needs a quantum drive, so it's got the basic navigation system. And it's true. Without the basic navigation, trying to fly to, say, a different hab on a planet or a moon is difficult. You can use these to do the delivery missions, because when you track the mission, you actually get the, your Moby glass actually shows you where you've got to fly. But without that, yeah, this is useless in terms of doing those types of missions. And so that is a bad. I can see that being a bad factor on this ship, same as it is on the P-52-72.
It's like I said though, if they want to in the future, there's no reason they can't include a module that where you just literally land on it and pick up the entire quantum module, and then all of a sudden it becomes a scout ship or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I know pre-show I was saying I didn't like that idea, but when you guys started talking in terms of scout ship, I thought, oh yeah, that is right. Because I was thinking you don't need to. It's such a cheap ship. You would just go where you wanted and build it. But if you've got your ship on your Idris and you can tack that on and then use it as a scout ship, that's a massive bonus.
I'd like to hope that they've had a bit of foresight with it, and like just for example, the bottom of the Idris, that they've left space in there for you to have a couple of modules so you can swap them in and out. Don't know if that'll be the case, but that'll another nice to have. And I know I'm going into another ship, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing about this, is that this isn't just its own ship, and that's another bad for it. It is really part of the Javelin, part of the Idris, part of the Bengal. It's part of the the larger ships. And even if you bring them on and say park them in the snub bay of the Carrack, now suddenly you have to worry about it becomes part of the Carrack. Now you have to worry about, can the Carrack carry the modules that it needs, and where does it put it, and those sorts of things. Like there is some, you can put it inside a Hercules. These things, the Hercules can fit 3 of these pretty comfortably inside of it. But if you're going to carry it in Hercules, the Hercules needs to carry all of the different modules. Now you're losing cargo space. So there is a trade-off when you have something like this that's in an area that it's not designed to go. But there's going to be a trade-off with lots of those sorts of things. Like I've often seen this compared to the Pisces and said the Pisces is better because it has a quantum drive, or possibly even a jump drive.
See, that's kind of where I disagree. I think this ship is better because it has more versatility and it doesn't need the quantum drive. And quite honestly, the only reason the Pisces needs one is because when the Carrack pulls up to the jump point, and the jump point's a small jump point and the Carrack can't go through it, the Pisces has to go through. That's the only reason why the Pisces needs one at all. And man, I'm going off on a tangent now about all the problems with the Pisces, but yeah, I'll leave that for another show.
Well, that's another show, but because this is often compared to the Pisces, because the Pisces has a quantum, or even like the X.
My point real quickly is that ship is the Pisces built for the Carrack. This is clearly built for the Idris and the Javelin, and I
Yeah.
think in its case, this is the better ship for the Javelin and for the Idris.
I'd even
And
argue this is a better ship for the Carrack, because of its flexibility. It depends on what you're doing in the Carrack, but most people aren't exploring in a Carrack. Most people are using it as their
and it
forward
depends on
base or
how
whatever.
many
So
and it depends on how many modules you could take with your Carrack to give it that
Yeah.
versatility. But I can understand why it gets put put up against the Pisces so often. The cargo version that we have has a jumpsuit in it. The Pisces has 2 jumpsuits in it. This can take 2 SCU of cargo. A little cargo version can take 2 SCU of cargo. The Pisces can take 4. The Pisces has weapons. It has 2 size 1 missiles. It has 2 to 4 size 1 laser repeaters. It has a jump drive. It has a quantum drive. In the game as it is, yeah, the Pisces craps all over the Argo. But when you look at the Argo in terms of what it's supposed to be able to do and what its role is, the Argo then surpasses, I think, the Pisces.
Yeah, I mean, all the Argo has to do is get its search and rescue module with a tier 3 repair, the basic medical bed or a repair module, and suddenly it's just the best Snub because it has those things, and we know that those are in development or were in development at one point. So
Another way you could look at it is the Pisces doesn't have any modularity, so it has a little bit of everything.
No.
This has a little bit of everything, but it's modular.
Yeah, so you can't
Yeah.
do all the things at
Yeah.
once.
And-
so that's the downside, but it's a comparison. It's like you don't necessarily always need 4 SCU of cargo, but you might need repair, and the cargo becomes the flexibility that you can add in later if you need to. So
look, long story short, I think like I can see the benefit of having this on those bigger ships, and it's like you said, yes, its definite drawback is it is not a standalone ship, but I don't think it needs to be, because when you put the roll down on paper, so to speak, it is built to be the the multi-use utility vehicle for those bigger ships, and it works really well at that role.
Yeah. And the name says it all: multi-purpose utility vehicle.
Right, Agris. I can't even speak English today. Algared, can you please sign us out, sir?
Yeah, sure. So, as usual, leave your comment below. We actually do read and love reading your comments. We may not always respond, but we do actually read every single one. Tell us what you think. Are we completely crackers? Are we off on some MPUV mushroom-induced psychedelic trip? Or have we got it right? If you like what you see, hit that like button, hit that bell button. It really does help. If you want to go further, join us on Patreon or on Discord. And on that point, I've been Algared, that's been Execute, and down below has been Astropub Paul Shelley. Take care, and we'll see you in the verse.
Catch you in the next one.